Chapter 9. Sipithizar, Dinner with Family. Just as Jint expected, the Bakbaruch arrived at the Countdom of Hyde 3 days later. In the meantime, Tramplblitz Squadron 1 was busy with bringing matters related to the exercise to a close. The star pilots were swamped analyzing all of the information, while the NCCs were occupied running checks on the ships. It was Star Force's tradition to cut loose in any post-combat feast, and the post-feast cleanup was perhaps the most vital of all of the copious things to do. With that, too, over and done with, Tramplblitz Squadron 1 was returning to the Imperial capital, thereby switching places with the Bakbaruch. Before transferring to the Bakbaruch, Jint paid a visit to the captain's quarters to offer Sawbash some parting greetings. If he'd wanted to, he could have gotten Sawbash to see him off at the point of transfer, but he figured the man didn't have the time for a leisurely chat. "We'll miss you," said Sawbash. Vanguard Ekriua included. Her, too. She did seem awfully taken with your cat. If you leave now without giving them an opportunity to reunite, she might be a little sad. Not that I ever truly understand what's going through that woman's head. Ah, I see. A wry smile. Diaho is on the Bakbaruch. He has a litter now, and one of the kittens looks just like him, so it's obvious who he'll be going to. The other kittens are really cute too, though, so if you're interested, I'd actually be thankful if you could take one of them off my hands. I'm afraid I don't find the prospect of bringing a cat into a war zone particularly admirable. We head into battle knowing what we're getting into, but it's rather rare for a cat to understand just what sort of sorry state of affairs it's been dragged to. Ah, right, sorry, he apologized. While this particular voyage hadn't been to an actual field of battle, his proverbial ledger was stained by a prior bringing a cat into war offense. And he'd been told off by Lafier in much the same way. Oh, there's no need to apologize. I also love doing things the people around me are unamused by. I mean, I didn't bring a cat on board just to grate on people's nerves. I will say that if Vanguard Ekriua takes responsibility, I won't object. Understood. I'll try asking her later. Then something dawned on him. Are you not interested in them, Mr. Sawbash? Interested in cats, you mean? Sawbash shook his head. I have a great deal of interest, but I've decided not to raise any. Why is that? It's a long story. Let's save it for another time, said Sawbash, changing the subject. In any case, it will be a slight load off not to get glared at by Fee Lartner any longer. Glared at? By Fee Lartner. Yes, that's right. You haven't noticed her glaring at me occasionally? Nope. Not at all, he replied diffidently. Did something happen? I wager it's because I've become a ship commander. This raid ship's. Sawbash nodded. Is it envy? Jint blinked. Saying I'm envied by Her Highness the Royal Princess may come across as my ego inflating, but, well, I don't know how else to put it. It's not me specifically she's jealous of course. It's all Cobb-class ship commanders. Though perhaps envy isn't quite the right assessment after all, he corrected himself. In all likelihood, she simply can't grasp why she isn't a Cobb-class ship commander herself. Now that you mention it, that may just be the case. Sawbash's words did ring some bells. Lafier was exceptionally averse to voicing anything that might resemble what she'd deem an idle complaint, but it was apparent through her attitude that she felt her being aboard the ship as a mere passenger was nonsensical. Am I holding her in place? He shuddered at the thought. There was no way that was true. A prideful royal princess like her, committing herself to a set of circumstances she didn't care for, while not obligated to. The thought wouldn't even cross her mind. When all is said and done, Her Highness is caught in a love triangle. A love triangle. That was an opinion of consequence. In short, said Sawbash, smiling, she doesn't know whether to choose you or the Star Forces. Jint nodded, not sure how to feel about this. I guess I should feel honored? I would feel very honored if I were in your shoes, but to each their own. Sawbash sipped his tea. Especially since your rival in love is the Star Forces. You have no chance of winning, but you're putting up a strong showing just by hanging in there. Are all elves like that? Huh. Sawbash looked slightly mystified. I'm not talking about Ovs. I'm talking about Ovriels. So that's not necessarily true among most Ovs then? Sawbash's expression turned yet more puzzled. Just think about your own case. From where I'm standing, you aren't the type to prioritize military matters over your crush. Well, you've got me there. Once again, Jint had ended up forgetting he himself was technically off. At any rate, I wish you the best. And I hope your starfief becomes stable, smiled Sabash. Let us meet again on the battlefield, Lanyu. That is, if I live to see that day. If I'm still alive, let's meet again. Jint used to employ that turn of phrase all the time when he was on Delk-2, but in that context, it was just tongue-in-cheek hyperbole. On Delk-2, people Jint and his friends' age didn't usually die. In war, however, that phrase reflected a fact of life. Descending from a world where the specter of death was ever present, to a world where that phrase was bandied about as a joke, Jint had felt a tad conscience-stricken. Let's, he replied, doing his best not to let his innermost thoughts leak out. Best of luck in battle. Jint hadn't needed to seek Ekryua out. He bumped into her on his way to his quarters. Are you leaving? Asked Ekryua, expressionless as usual. Yep, Jint nodded. It'd be great if we could meet again someday. Great for who? Said Ekryua. Jint needed a beat to bounce back from that, after which he asked her whether she'd like to adopt a kitten. I don't want to raise a cat, she replied immediately. It's more fun to look after other people's cats. Gotcha. Oh well, he said, surrendering just like that. There was no need to push the kitten on Ekryua. Jint turned to leave her. Wait, she said, grabbing him by the arm. Is that cat cute? Yeah, super cute. Among the kittens are Rake, pure white, striped just like Daiho, and Nisre, black and white, for patterns. But the striped one already has someone lined up. Did you name them? No, not yet. I think their owners have that right. Ekryua was staring a hole into him. Do you, want one? No, she said, letting go of his arm. I'll be able to see your cat again soon. I don't know if you will, actually. They were called off cats, but they lived no longer than other cats. I know I will, she declared. What makes you say that? Vice Hecto Commander Avriel will soon return, which means you'll also soon return. Along with your cat. That's silly. Leifir re-enlisting is her business, and me re-enlisting is mine. I'm not Leifir's accessory. You just don't understand. And with that, Ekryua turned on her heels. Jint watched as she walked away. The Star Forces was a vast institution. Jint figured that even if both of them ended up returning, there was no guarantee they'd be able to be together. Forgive my sneaking suspicion, Your Highness, but might you want to stay here, deep down? Asked Samson. Huh? Leifir turned to look at him. No, that's not true. Why do you think that? It's just a hunch. I got the same feeling, said Selnai, concerned. Your Highness seems listless somehow. Is the current situation not to your satisfaction? Your concern is unnecessary, she said sternly. 3 minutes until abortage, announced the ship's speakers. This time around, he was scheduled to transfer directly from ship to ship, as opposed to boarding a conveyance ship as a ferry. What is Jint doing? Said Leifir, happy to use the announcement as an excuse to change the subject. Jint was here now, accompanied by his automated luggage. The star pilots of the Flickob assembled for a Patfoseketh gangway send-off. After exchanging some ceremonial remarks, the Hyde Countdom group transferred to the Bokbiruch. Over on the Bokbiruch, Investigator Yestesh and his subordinates, the top officials of the ship, lined up to salute him. Leifir stole a peek at Jint, who was standing beside her. He seemed a touch dispirited. Anger flared inside her. Had it been a mistake for her to be here? Chest out, Jint, she whispered. This is your battlefield. My battlefield. Isn't it? If it's not, then I'm going back, she said, and she meant it. No, you're right, said Jint, sticking his chest out. If I fail here, I won't die, but others might. And if my thoughtlessness ever makes victims out of decent people, then I'll spend the rest of my life hating myself. I'm not going to live as long as you, but I still plan on living 100 more years. And a century of misery is a long, long century. I don't need a soliloquy. Right. But thanks for reminding me. The Countdom of Hyde is absolutely my battlefield. His expression now cheerier by half, Jint strode forward. But Leifir got the sense both his face and his gait were a brave front. Atop the chaise, the kittens were a tangled ball of frolicking fur. Meanwhile, their mother, Sir Kruka, was grooming on the carpet. It was difficult to believe that until very recently, the members of that litter would kneel betrayal when taken mere inches from their mother. Their father, Daiho, was napping on the table. Jint reckoned he was overthinking it, but damned if it didn't look like Daiho was sulking. One of the kittens slipped down from the chaise. With the typical off-cat cry that so tickled the soul, it called out for what, Jint didn't know. A hand reached for the kitten. The hand of a certain Avriel, who was seated beside the chaise. The royal princess didn't even look at it as she carried it back up onto the chair. It carried on playing with its siblings, evidently forgetting its embarrassing slip-up in a matter of seconds. "If that isn't the picture of peace," said Jint. "This isn't peace," Leifier stated, not taking her eyes off the screen projected from her wrist gear. "This is just time in need of killing." "Oh, come on. A little leisure time's a good thing." Jint gazed out the window at the snowy scenery. Suddenly, Selnai's face took up part of the wall. "Your Highness, Your Excellency. A reply has arrived from the Land World Administration. Please send it to my wrist gear," said Jint. "At once, sir," she said, lowering her head. "Do you have any other requests? Call Mr. Yestesh to the office if you could." "That's it." "Understood," said Selnai, before disappearing. "Has that woman become your personal secretary?" asked Leifier. "Yeah, but only temporarily," said Jint. "Her job is antimatter fuel tank overseer, but here in Mine Countdom, there aren't any to oversee, so she's got nothing to do. So she's playing messenger for me, just to kill time." "That's a good idea," said Leifier. "I should have been the one doing that." "You," said Jint, startled. According to most, Leifier would have exhibited much less psychological resistance to the idea of just barging in on him unannounced with whatever news, rather than playing messenger. "What will you do now?" "Work, of course." Jint operated his wrist gear, and the window, the snow, and the brick wall vanished, replaced by an inorganic wall and door. Beyond that door lay the office. Jint stepped through. "An orbital tower construction base, you say?" "Oh, of course," said Yestesh. "I forgot, this territory nation doesn't have an orbital tower yet. In the Empire, every land world had an orbital tower, save for one. But the construction plan was exceedingly concrete. It was why the construction base existed. The war started right around when the base was completed, and it had been summarily abandoned. Martinua's star system government had proposed the construction base as a meeting place. "I've never been there, but it seems like it ticks the boxes for a conference venue," replied Jint, perusing the files attached with the proposal document. "The orbital tower construction plan is alive, and the base is being maintained, so it remains airtight. It also seems easy enough to guard." "So you don't have any objections to the meeting place, correct?" asked Leifier. "Uh-huh. It may be a facility of the Land World Administration, but it's the closest thing to a neutral zone in my whole countdom. I don't have an opinion regarding the meeting place." "But this," Yestesh tracked the strings of characters on the screen embedded in the desk with his eyes. Just that moment, the Land World Administration had sent a message detailing their conditions for giving sovereignty to the Empire, and the investigator was processing them as he read. Finally, after devouring the missive, Yestesh raised his head. "Do you intend to accept these terms?" "Do you have any objections to that?" asked Jint, out of courtesy. "Well, this is a matter between the Land World Administration and the system's lord, so I can interpose. But I must tell you, it's an exceptional case among exceptional cases," he said, a tad pompously. "I thought as much. Is it viable in the eyes of the law?" "It should be. One of my subordinates is a specialist in that area. If you so desire, shall I have the terms scrutinized?" "Please, by all means." "And if the terms are, in fact, legally valid, you will accept them?" "I plan to, yes," replied Jint. "Not to overstep my bounds yet again, sir, but I don't think that's very wise. Isn't this a tad weak need of you?" "It might be, but I believe it to be the best way." "I see." Yestesh looked unconvinced, to say the least, but he sent the file to his legal specialist. "Now, allow me to make a suggestion to you as an official of the Empire." "Suggest away." "It would behoove you to add one more provision to the text." Yestesh proceeded to explain how the Land World Administration's sovereignty should be limited to just the land world of Martinu. It was de rigueur among the Empire's territory nations for the administrative domains of land-world administrations not to extend past their respective planets' atmospheres. As such, in the star systems like the Archduchy of Latepan with 3 inhabited planets, each planet had its own land-world administration for a total of 3 in the system. In general, space, the stars, and uninhabited planets belong to the OV. That was the Empire's fundamental policy. Far be it from me to thrust my nose into the finances of the House of Hyde, but if you do not make it clear that priority over the resources outside the land world belongs to the Lord, it could hamper the operations of various imperial institutions, to say nothing of the star forces. I understand. Let's work out a draft, said Jint, but there was no need. The phraseology was all boilerplate stuff pulled from a collection of legal ordinances. The specialist finished looking it all over within the space of about an hour. The Empire did not forbid any of the Land World Administration's proposals. The text was altered with a single amendment and then sent back to the Land World Administration as the final response of the House of Hyde. The attack on the Four de Antobeta must have been effective, for the government of Hyde proved amenable to the added stipulation. With this, a meeting was no longer necessary, yet Jint wanted to go through with it anyway, for no other reason than to meet his family. Jint, you've gotten so big. And you got older, Till. Jint shifted his gaze on his other surrogate parent. You haven't changed at all, though, Lena. When did you become such a flatterer? She smiled. Since I was born. You never noticed? I suppose. The place they were currently at was slated to become a worship chapel once the base became fully operational. As of now, however, it was all but empty. No cross, no pulpit, no pews. The stained glass images depicting religious icons and mysteries were all that hinted at the building's future. Jint had his doubts the place would ever actually play host to hymns or homilies. The system government arranged for a table and chairs for them. Let me introduce my companion, said Jint, pointing at her. This is a royal princess of the Empire by the name of Avrielsek née Duberskruber Perian Philamher. I am pleased to make your acquaintance, said Lafier in Martinese. She said it fluidly, but that was the extent of the Martinese she knew. Till and Lena were visibly surprised. Till recovered from his surprise faster. He clumsily bowed his head and said, We welcome you to our sector, Your Highness. I give you my gratitude, she nodded. You really did move up in the world, huh, Jint, said Till, impressed. Jint nodded in reply, and left it at that. Please kiss Her Highness's hand, called out a sudden voice. What the? Exclaimed Jint. It's the press, Till grinned, abashed. There's no way they wouldn't want to cover such a historic moment. Isn't this kind of a breach of our agreement, Till? Jint protested. It's supposed to be us only, the president of the Hyde star system, the Count of Hyde, and his companion. I know. They're not here at the base. All the equipment is remote-controlled. I mean, be that as it may, please, Mr. President, you've gotta, said a reporter, their tone of voice decidedly on the fresh side. Never mind. Just understand that if ladies don't go around giving people their hands to kiss, said Jint. The royal princess would hardly be elated to press part of her body against the lips of people she'd just met. Okay. Till crossed his arms toward the ceiling. May we ask you to cooperate? Pressed the voice. How rude, said Lafier. She wasn't using the simplified version on her wrist gear, but rather a specialized translation device mounted to her ear. She couldn't speak Martinese, but she could understand it perfectly. Her Highness stated that you're being rude, shouted Till. Wow, said Jint. I guess the Avriel reputation for unholy wrath made it all the way out here. You idiot. That has nothing to do with this. Now then, let's get the work over with. There's no need for pomp and circumstance between us two, said Till, taking out a sheet of paperwork. Unlike the OV, the Martinese couldn't give up their love of paper. This really is for the best, in the end, said Jint, after rereading. I don't think so at all, said Lena. You're not a government official, so you're not allowed to speak on this affair, said Till, without looking at her. Till's only ever this strict when it's convenient for him. You think this is convenient for me? The paper was a consensus document. The Hyde government was to cede its sovereignty and become a territory nation of the Empire. but on the proviso that the one who currently held the title of Count of Hyde and all who held it in the past were never to enter within a 1 light-second radius of Martinua's center. Nor was the Count allowed to stay in the entire Hyde Kingdom for a period of 10 or more days, or communicate with the land world. Naturally, the House of Hyde would have to dispatch a magistrate to do the Liege's work in their place, but the selection of that magistrate was also stipulated to be the Land World Administration's right. In other words, by signing this document, Jint was nixing any chance of ever returning home. But in exchange, the Hyde star system would be as close to independent as possible. "Is our conversation being recorded?" asked Jint under his breath. "No. Words spoken between leaders are top secret, for the government's eyes only." "Then I'll be bold and say I'd have liked to walk the exotic jungle one more time." The second he said it, his eyes grew teary. He felt a drop run down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. "This is your last chance. Don't sign. You can defect to our side or seek asylum." Jint glanced at Leifir. "No, I can't mess up my home planet's future out of personal sentiment. I don't think my replacement as Count would be as generous as me." "Liar," said Lena, laughing through her tears. "I'm not lying, and that's not the only reason either." Jint pulled a chair and sat down. He waited until Till was seated to sign. The man who was president signed as well, and they exchanged documents. "Now, this agreement won't take effect until it's approved by Parliament. This place may be within a light second from Martin Center, but I won't cry foul until the agreement becomes law." Till put out his right hand. Jint took it and mused that this was probably the first time he'd ever shaken hands with his de facto father. "Now it's private time for us," Till shouted. "So please, enough recording." After a bit of a back and forth, Till's will held sway. Lena started arranging the dishes on the purely functional table. "I made you your favorites. Eat up, Your Highness." Yeah," said Jint, too shy to string together a proper reply. "Thank you for the meal," said Leifir, though she didn't partake right away. Her eyes wandered all over the table. "You eat with your hands," said Jint, who realized she was searching for chopsticks. To show her how it was done, Jint took a bite out of his portion of Quinsbear, a sandwich with beef and white cabbage. The signature Martinese sweet and spicy style of seasoning was so nostalgic Jint couldn't get enough. Leifir looked on with astonishment and nibbled at her own Quinsbear. "I've been meaning to ask you, but what's with that luggage thing?" "Oh, I just thought I'd bring it along, seeing as this is family time," said Jint, putting down his food to open the carrier. "What are those?" said Till, taken aback. "Cats," said Jint, holding Daiho and Sir Crooka's children in arm. One was a pure white rake, and the other a black and white Nisray. "Care to raise them for me?" "So that's a cat." "I've seen them in videos before," said Lena, reaching out a timid hand. Jint handed her one. "I'm sure the ones I saw in the video were bigger than these little guys." "They're still young." "And they get that big?" "How big do you mean?" "They were the size of humans." "Oh, those must have been tigers or lions or some such." "These are house cats. They only get around this big," he said, showing them a picture of himself with Daiho. He hadn't brought Daiho with him. There were too many crevices for him to hide in at this base. It'd be a pain to try to find him if he ran away. "Can I get this picture off you?" "Of course." "We can't take the cats, though," said Till. "You may have forgotten, being off-world for so long, but we can't take in anything that could upset the ecosystem." "I didn't forget, I just thought that old law might have changed." "I'm afraid not." "That sucks." Lena was absorbing the photo while, right beside her, Leifir was trying Melanoshu with a stiff and solemn expression. "How do you say, 'It's delicious' in your home language?" she whispered. "You don't have to force yourself. I know it's not to your taste." "That's not true. Just tell me," Jint told her. The time they spent together was lovely, but it had to come to an end. "Be safe, you too," said Jint. "We will." "I'm sorry for everything, Jint." "Glad we could meet again," said Till, who hugged him. "Took the words right out of my mouth," said Jint. Lena couldn't bring herself to say goodbye. She just put Jint's hand against her cheek and sobbed. It was when she turned to Leifir that words finally came. "I implore you, Your Highness, take good care of him." "Stop it, Lena." Jint was red in the face. "I'm not a kid." "I don't think you are," said Lena. "But How do I say, leave him to me? Asked Lafier. Jint gave her a long stretch of words. That many words for leave him to me? Though suspicious, she repeated the sentence. Jint smiled. He hadn't lied to her. Till and Lena most likely received what she wanted to convey loud and clear. He just couched it in a Martinese language expression. Lafier's phrasing was too blunt to be taken as anything but perfunctory by a Martinese speaker. The direct translation was as follows: I will be his soil to stand on, and I shall make him my soil to stand on.